Hi, Right Writers. Thank you so much for watching today's video. By the end of this video, you will be able to write a paragraph on personification. So the poem that I have up right now is a poem which I referenced in a previous video, My Rock by Pat Mora, and we're going to be using her poem to look for personification. So personification is when we give human characteristics or human traits to non-human places, ideas, animals, or things, objects. And so that's the first thing, and really the only thing that I'm going to be looking for in this particular poem for this paragraph. The reason why I choose just one thing to focus on is because it allows me as a writer to, again, hyper focus on one idea. It helps me stay organized, and I'm not scattered all over the place when I'm thinking about too many things. And so I want you to keep that in mind, right, writers, that it's not so much, how many different ideas you can attack with one document or one poem or one piece of literature or one nonfiction article. To me, it's more important to understand your topic, what you're going to write about, and just focus on that one idea to ensure your success. Find the text evidence to support that idea, write your paragraph, and then you can always come back and go back to what you're reading and look at it using another literary device or something else. And so that's how really I am successful with my writing. And so that's what I want to do. I want to ensure your success, and that's what we're going to be doing here. So the first thing I want to do is, on this time I have my poem on the left and I have my document on the right. So I'm just going to write a very basic definition of personification. So personification is when we're giving human characteristics or traits to non-human ideas, things, objects, animals, nature, really just about anything. And I'm going to even put places, because sometimes I notice that writers will do that with locations. So giving human characteristics or traits to non-human ideas, things, objects, animals, nature, and places. So I have that in mind, and now I want to make sure that I read the poem, and I'm going to start to identify where I'm seeing personification, because what I want to make sure that I do is that I provide text evidence. So by text evidence, I mean that I have quotations from the poem, meaning direct lines from the poem. We need to put quotation marks around them. So text evidence, direct lines from the poem, focus just on personification. Again, let's read the poem. My Rock by Pat Mora. Summer's ending. I sit on my desert rock, listen to the world's hum. Crows and ravens caw, finches and sparrows chirp. A dog barks. Can I face the hall of judgments? A breeze strokes my face, brings me back to spiders and lizards busy at their chores. Private conversations, sights and sounds I savor. This earth, my home. High on the vast blue canvas, clouds curl, float. Taking a deep breath, I gather myself. I bring what I am. Lovely. Just a beautiful poem. I'm going to read it again because it's important to savor the moment. My Rock by Pat Mora. Summer's ending. I sit on my desert rock, listen to the world's hum. Crows and ravens caw, finches and sparrows chirp, a dog barks. Can I face the hall of judgments? A breeze strokes my face, brings me back to spiders and lizards busy at their chores, private conversations, sights and sounds I savor. This earth, my home. High on the vast blue canvas, clouds curl, float. Taking a deep breath, I gather myself. I bring what I am. Now let's take a look at personification. So finding places where Pat Mora gives human characteristics or traits to non-human ideas, things, objects, animals, nature, places. So summer is ending. And I know I see the word summer, and I know that it is an example of nature, but can summer end? Is summer something that can end? Yes, it can. After summer comes fall. So that's really not an example of personification. So I'm just going to put a visual X there so I know that that's not an example of text evidence. Those lines from Pat Mora's poem are not lines that I can use to demonstrate personification. Okay, let's look at the next stanza. Stanza 2 here. This was stanza 1, even though it was only one line. I sit on my desert rock, listen to the world's hum. Okay, so the narrator is physically sitting on a desert rock. And can rocks come from the desert? They can. Can the narrator listen to something? Yes, the narrator can physically or mentally listen to something. Can the world hum? So I'm going to put a circle around this one because this could be an example of personification, but I don't like to immediately start writing it because I want to look for more examples of personification, and maybe I will find something stronger. But for me, the world humming would be an example of personification because as humans, we cannot physically or mentally hear necessarily the world hum. So that's why I'm circling that. Can we hear crows and ravens caw? Caw-caw. Yes, we can. Can we hear finches and sparrows chirp, chirp, chirp? Yes, we can. Can we hear a dog barking? Yes, we can. We can hear the woof or the growl from dogs. So I'm just going to put some lines through these parts because, again, those are examples where it's not really personification. So I do not want to be distracted by that. Next, I'm going to look at this next stanza. Can I face the halls of judgments? So can the narrator face something? Yes, they can. But is a hall full of judgments? Can a hallway judge you? No, it cannot. And so for me, that is an example of personification. So this idea of the halls of judgments. As I read to the next stanza, it says, a breeze strokes my face. Can a breeze pass by your face? Yes. But can it physically stroke your face? Technically, no. So that's why I'm going to circle that, because to stroke is to sort of, pet or use your hand to stroke your face. That to me is an example of personification, giving human characteristics to non-human ideas, nature, and that would be an example of that. Brings me back to spiders and lizards busy at their chores, private conversation. conversations rather. So this to me is also an example of personification, this idea of spiders and lizards having busy at their chores. They don't think of that as chores, and they can't really have private conversations. And so I'm definitely going to say that that is personification. Now, can you savor sights and sounds as a narrator, as a person? Yes, you can. Then she goes on to say, or the narrator, this earth, my home. Can earth be a home to people? It really can. So I'm going to say that that is not an example of personification. And then the poem continues, high on the vast blue canvas, clouds curl and float. So in this case, the narrator is talking about the sky being a blue canvas, and it's not really giving human characteristics. So that's why I'm going to put lines on that. And clouds curling and floating, can they curl? Do they float? Yes, and I think that that would be not a great example really of personification. And so that's why I'm going to put a line through those. And then at the end, taking a deep breath, I gather myself, I bring what I am. And here the narrator is talking really about themselves. And so I'm going to cross that out because that is really not an example of personification. Now I've got the text evidence that I can start using and putting this down for my paragraph. I'm going to put in quotations because as soon as I go from here, as soon as I go from here, from this side to this other side, I need to remember that I've got to put quotation marks because these are not my words. These are Pat Mora's words. And so I need to make sure that I give credit where credit is due. So I'm going to put in quotations, the world's hum. And I'm going to put these dots down, those what are called ellipses. So dot, 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 or period, 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 to let the reader know that, writers, that this tells the reader, hey, there was some more information or there were previous words that were given. However, I am just taking what I want as a writer. So that's why ellipses or those periods are super important when writing a paragraph. So I'm writing here the world's hum, and I'm going to make this a bit larger so you're able to see it a bit better here. So I have the world's hum. Then I have more text evidence. I have the hall of judgments, or the halls of judgments, dot, 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 and period, 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 ellipses. I'm going to borrow a breeze strokes my face. A breeze strokes my face. And I'm going to add spiders and lizards, busy at their chores, private conversations. Now I have all the evidence that I need to support personification. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy and paste this link to the poem. So I also have it in case I need it, and I've got that available to me. And so now I'm going to say goodbye. I know this is called My Rock. I know it's by Pat Mora. I'm going to go ahead and write it down here so I do not forget. Now I'm going to say goodbye to this poem for a moment so I can focus really on this Google Doc that I'm creating here. So we've got Text evidence, direct lines from the poem, the world's hum, the halls of judgments, a breeze strokes my face, spiders and lizards busy at their chores, private conversations. Now, if we were, let's say we were in middle school. So I'm going to put in here a middle school example, and then I'm going to put a high school example. So we're going to start with the middle school example first. So for middle school, really what your teacher would like to do is and I say middle school, and maybe what I'm really saying is anywhere from fifth grade to eighth grade or seventh grade. Really, what we're looking for as a writer is just being able to identify it. Can we find the personification? And can we include text evidence from it? And so here we have everything we need. And so under this example, what I would say is something like, My Rock by Pat Mora has many examples of personification in her poem. Notice how I have identified what I'm looking for. I'm looking for personification. I'm letting the reader know that I'm going to have examples. I'm letting the reader know that I'm talking about a poem. I'm letting the reader know who wrote the poem, and I'm letting the reader know the title of the poem. So I have done many things in one sentence. At this point, I may want to give the reader a definition, my own definition or my own take on what does personification means, or what does personification mean. So personification is when writers give human characteristics or traits to non-human ideas, animals, and nature and places. My Rock by Pat Mora has many examples of personification in her poem. Personification is when writers give human characteristics or traits, and maybe I just want to go with traits, human traits, to non-human ideas, animals, nature, and places. So I just sort of gave an overview of what personification is by giving the definition. And now I'm going to show the text evidence. So I want to tell the reader where it says it in the poem. So in the poem, it has the world's hum, the halls of judgments, a breeze strokes my face, spiders and lizards busy at their chores, private conversation. Now, notice how the text evidence is in the same order as it happens in the poem. So the world is a place, halls of judgments are a place, breeze is an example of nature, and spiders and lizards are examples of animals. So I am actually going to switch some ordering of what I have here. So I'm going to say when writers give human traits to non-human places, nature, and animals. And I'm going to take ideas out because it really flows with how I use the text evidence from the poem. So now let's take a look. For example, and because I'm now going to give an example, for example, the narrator can hear the world's hum and halls of judgments. So I'm going to take out the, and I'm just going to say, can hear the world's hum and halls of judgments. And so this is the first example that we're using, and these are places. So notice how, again, I'm going in order of how it's happening in the poem. So to take it from the top, My Rock by Pat Mora has many examples of personification in her poem. Personification is when writers give human traits to non-human places, nature, and animals. For example, the narrator can hear the world's hum and halls of judgments. However, the world cannot hum and halls cannot judge you. And now, because I'm adding more information, I'm going to use a transition word. In addition, I think I like in addition. Sorry, writers. In addition, Mora, or the narrator, describes, or I can say, in addition, the narrator personifies. Ooh, I made a personification a verb. In addition, the narrator personifies nature by saying, a breeze strokes my face. Finally, animals are personified in the poem when it states, meaning the poem, when it states, spiders and lizards busy at their chores. And again, I could just copy and paste this, but it just allows me time to just really think as I'm writing. And that's super important, to have that time for yourself, and have just a quiet space to think. Okay, so now we've got a very basic, sort of middle school example of personification, and we're going to take a look at it right here. So in the middle school example, we're really just giving the examples of the personification. We're not explaining how the personification is used, and we're not really analyzing it. That's really more for a high school or a college example. So we've got My Rock by Pat Mora has many examples of personification in her poem. Personification is when writers give human traits to non-human places, nature, and animals. For example, the narrator can hear the world's hum and halls of judgments. However, the world cannot hum and halls cannot judge you. In addition, the narrator personifies nature by saying, a breeze strokes my face. Technically, only people can stroke your face. Finally, animals are personified in the poem when it states, spiders and lizards busy at their chores, private conversations. Animals do not think they are doing chores. Animals do not think they are doing chores. They are surviving. So I can say that, but I may sort of go into something different. So I really want to keep myself focused. So I'm not going to allow myself to drift. Animals do not think cannot think that they are doing chores. Think that they are doing chores. Nor, now this is me using a conjunction, nor can they have private conversations, nor can they speak privately to one another. Animals cannot think they are doing chores, nor can they speak privately to one another. I used a conjunction, nor, to separate this idea, this complete idea, with this complete idea. So you can do that. Animals cannot think that they are doing chores, nor can they speak privately to one another. Now, I like to, when I write a paragraph, I like to use the word therefore, just to wrap up what I was talking about, which was personification. And I want to go back to what I said in my very first sentence. Therefore, Mora has several examples, several personification examples in her work. Now I'm saying work, and I guess I could say poem, and it's just another way to say it. My Rock by Pat Mora has many examples of personification in her poem. Personification is when writers give human traits to non-human places, nature, and animals. For example, the narrator can hear the world's hum and halls of judgments. However, the world cannot hum and halls cannot judge you. In addition, the narrator personifies nature by saying, "A breeze strokes my face." Technically, only people can stroke your face, or I may say can touch your face. That way I'm not repeating too much of what the poem is saying. Finally, animals are personified in the poem when it states, "Spiders and lizards busy at their chores, private conversations." Animals cannot think that they are doing chores, nor can they speak privately to one another. Therefore, Mora has several personification examples in her poem. I'm going to move on now to the high school example. I pretty much want to use the same thing, but I need to level it up. So I really need to think about how she's using it, how it's being analyzed. So I'm going to borrow this and I'm going to Control C and I'm going to hit Control V because now I want to talk about the why. So now we're looking at why is this being used? And when I talk about the why, I'm getting into what is called analysis. I'm understanding why the writer is doing this or thinking about why the writer might be doing this. And so this is where we start to level up in our thinking when it comes to analyzing and within our writing. And so that's what we're going to be looking at next. But I have to go back to the poem because it's impossible to just write ideas on why without going back to the text. So I'm going to minimize this and I'm going to come back to this poem. So I'm going to clear the screen and I'm going to come back to and recircle the areas where I know there was personification, and that way I can kind of look at that more specifically and think about that a little bit and thinking about the why. So the title is called My Rock, and now I'm going to reread it. My Rock. And obviously, this is referring to, I think it's important to think about the desert rock. And that's really what Pat Mora is referring to. And this idea of my shows ownership or possession. So as if she owns the desert rock. And so I think that's very interesting. That's a side note. All right, so My Rock. Summer's ending. I sit on my desert rock. Listen to the world's hum. So listening to the world's hum. So she's using personification, using sound, and the narrator is actually listening to her surroundings. So in this case, I'm going to go here and when we're thinking about humming, I want you to be thinking about sound, and narrator is basically listening. Narrator, and they use the word listen, narrator hears the nature around her. So really, that's what's going on. I sit on my desert rock, listen to the world's hum. Crows and ravens caw, finches and sparrows chirp, a dog barks. So the sound, we're hearing sound, and the nature, and the narrator hears the nature. The narrator is present. So very in tune to what's going on around her. So narrator hears nature, narrator is present, not distracted, is present, is really there. There's no cell phone going off as she's on that desert rock. All right. And then we go to a new stanza. Can I face the halls of judgments? So in this case, I've got to go to this idea of summer ending, and I'm actually going to use a different pen here. So I'm going to clear this screen again, and I'm going to bring this idea of summer ending and this hall of judgments. So the fact that summer is ending tells me that they've got to go back to something, whether it's school or work or they were on vacation. And so for me, that is connected. That's connected to what she's talking about. So this idea of can I face the halls of judgments? I'm going to go with, again, this idea of when what's being personified, again, the halls cannot judge you, but it definitely tells us why would she bring it up? Why would she say it in the form of a question? So she's asking a question, can I face the halls of judgments? So for some reason, this narrator, so now we're looking at the why here. The narrator feels self-conscious. So this narrator feels self-conscious. This narrator feels anxious and, is, really thinks about how others view her. So the narrator feels self-conscious, anxious, and, really feels, is questioning. So questioning whether or not they can handle what's coming. Here again, notice how we're getting behind the why of the analysis, not just talking about it and defining it and identifying it. We're understanding the why. Why did she say this? And then we go back to the nature. So we go from, here it's like we're going into the real world, but now we're back to nature again. And so a breeze strokes my face. So then we're going back to a sense of feeling. So touch, feeling or touch, and the narrator is reconnecting to to nature. Narrator reconnects to nature. So it's almost like when they asked the question before, can I face the halls of judgments? It's like their mind drifted to the future or what's to come. And then they're like, why am I thinking about that? I need to get back to where I am. And I am in this beautiful place in nature, in the desert rock, on this desert rock. And so the narrator reconnects to nature. And then they reconnect by, again, a breeze strokes my face, brings me back to spiders and lizards busy at their chores, private conversations. So now we're really, the narrator is watching, these insects and these animals, these lizards, watching nature, animals, watching nature and animals doing what they do. I'm just going to put doing their thing. And, even private conversation, so we can hear these insects, we can hear the sounds that they're making. So, watching nature and animals do their thing and hearing, back to the sounds and again, reconnecting to that nature. So I'm going to head back to my document, and now I'm going to go deeper into this why behind this personification. And so that's what we're going to be doing next. And I do want to use what I used for the middle school example. So I'm really going to go back to using these examples that I provided. So it's when when we move to the high school level, community college level, I mean, the thinking is still the same. It's just we level up. We level up in our writing. And so some of the writing stays the same, but we just add on the analysis, the why. So here we have My Rock by Pat Mora has many examples of personification in her poem. Personification is when writers give human traits to non-human places, nature, and animals. For example, the narrator can hear the world's hum and halls of judgments. Now, in this case, I'm going to take out the halls of judgments because that actually demonstrates a shift in the poem. And so I'm going to take that part out. So I'm going to elaborate on that later. For example, the narrator first hears, and so I'm going to say that because I think that's true in the poem. It's what she first hears. Listen to the world's hum. That's the first part that we hear, that we see where the narrator is experiencing this, experiencing nature. For example, the narrator first hears the world's hum. The world's hum, signifying that the narrator is connecting with nature and is present in nature. Is present in nature without any distractions. Okay, notice how this is much different from the middle school example. I don't want to keep going back and forth to that, but again, you're leveling up your writing, you're explaining the why. Is it my personal opinion? Yes, it is my personal opinion, which is why high school students and community college students struggle, because you've got to be in it. You've got to be in this poem. You've got to connect with it, and your friend's interpretation may be slightly different from yours. And that is not to say that yours is better or worse. Everyone is entitled to their interpretation. Just use the text evidence, the poem, to prove your point. The lines from the poem. All right, let's continue. For example, the narrator first hears the world's hum, signifying that the narrator is connecting with nature and is present in nature without any distractions. However, the narrator shifts into another topic, or shifts into the real world, the real world when questioning the halls of judgments. However, the narrator shifts into the real world, shifts from nature back into the real world when questioning the halls of judgments. Here, the personification is used to demonstrate that the narrator feels self-conscious and anxious. Then the narrator reconnects to nature, reconnects back to nature, or reconnects to nature through personification when a breeze strokes my face. A breeze strokes the narrator's face. And I'm just going to say her face because, you know, for me, it's Pat Mora. It says my rock. And so it's really, you know, the narrator in this case is, in fact, the poet. So then I'm going to say, then Mora reconnects to nature through personification when a breeze, when she states that a breeze strokes my face. I'm going to keep the my face because, again, that's demonstrating the first person perspective in this poem. All right. And then we're going to go to spiders and lizards. Let's take a look at this so far. My Rock by Pat Mora has many examples of personification in her poem. Personification is when writers give human traits to non-human places, nature, and animals. For example, the narrator first hears the world's hum, signifying that the narrator is connecting with nature and is present without any distractions. And is present without any distractions. However, the narrator shifts from nature back into the real world when questioning the halls of judgments. Here, the personification is used to demonstrate that the narrator feels self-conscious and anxious. Then Mora reconnects to nature, back to nature, through personification when she states a breeze strokes my face. It is as if nature is reminding her to come back to where she is, to come back to the present. To the present. Finally, come back. A breeze strokes my face. It is as if nature is reminding her to come back to the present, to come back to where she is. Finally, to come back to where she is. Actually, I'm going to keep that, but I'm going to make that its own sentence and lead it into the next text evidence example. It is as if nature is reminding her to come back to the present. Indeed, or in fact, indeed, she returns to where she is. Indeed, she does return to where she is. Because she can see, because the narrator can see and hear. And hear spiders and lizards busy at their chores, private conversations. So I'm going to go ahead and copy paste that and save just a little bit of time here. Thank you, writers. So indeed, she does return to where she is because the narrator can see and hear spiders and lizards busy at their chores, private conversations. Therefore, personification and now I go back to the paragraph, and let's take a look. My Rock by Pat Mora has many examples of personification in her poem. Personification is when writers give human traits to non-human places, nature, and animals. For example, the narrator first hears the world's hum, signifying that the narrator is connecting with nature and is present without any distractions. However, the narrator shifts from nature back into the real world when questioning the halls of judgments. Here, the personification is used to demonstrate that the narrator feels self-conscious and anxious. Then Mora reconnects back to nature through personification when she states that a breeze strokes my face. It is as if nature is reminding her, or in fact, it is as if nature reminds her to come back to the present. Indeed, she does return to where she is because the narrator later states that she can see and hear spiders and lizards busy at their chores, private conversations. Therefore, personification allows My Rock by Pat Mora has many examples of personification in her poem. So thinking about the different ways, so this idea of coming back to nature and reconnecting. So really that's what it's about. So therefore, personification is used. Therefore, personification is primarily used to ensure that Mora does not forget about who she is and where she is. And I'm going to say about where she is. Or maybe that she's just in this perfect place that she too is part of that nature. So I think I want to bring that in. Therefore, personification is primarily used to ensure that Mora does not forget her place in the world. I really like that because it brings us back to the world's hum. And I really like that. I like when, for me, writers, it's really about coming back full circle to what we started with. And so I really like that. Therefore, personification is primarily used to ensure that Mora does not forget her place in the world, in the world's hum. And I'm going to stop there and just sort of, end it at that point. I think that could absolutely work there. Because if I shrink this down and come back to her poem, you know, she uses this idea of savoring this earth, my home. She takes a deep breath. I gather myself. I bring what I am. And so, really, that is definitely, for me, that interpretation of, is ensuring that Mora is a part of this world. We all are a part of this world, of this nature, and we all, animals alike, nature alike, we're part of this world, this world's hum. And so I think that will do it for our example of, analyzing just personification, using a middle school example here, presenting one to you, and also writers and fellow subscribers, YouTubers. I love you all very much, and I appreciate you all enduring this really long analysis just on one thing, on personification. But I really hope through these examples, and this channel that you understand that writing is so important. You've got to write, you've got to analyze, make time for it, and just focus on one thing. And just do that one thing really, really well, so that you'll never forget how to do it. You'll never, if you watch this entire video, right, writers, I know that you will know what personification is. So therefore, personification is primarily used to ensure that Mora does not forget her place in this world, in the world's hum. And so I am going to stop our video here and say thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. I really love what I do. I hope that you got something out of this video, and that my enthusiasm for writing will at some point trickle down, and you'll feel what I feel. And it's just amazing. And I love this poem so much. Just after doing this analysis, I feel very, very connected to this poem. Thanks for watching. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.